Hey, hi, I'm Rabbi Jessica Locketz, and I'm joined today by Jamie Dell, a licensed professional counselor. So, Jamie, thank you for joining me.
Sure, thank you for having me.
Sure. How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. It's one day at a time right now for everyone because of all the uncertainty. That's the best we can do right now. Taking it one day at a time.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's an important reminder, right? Just to kind of see how we're doing each day, to check in with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Part of your work is around grief and grief counseling. What are you seeing right now?
So right now I'm seeing people adjusting to this new way of life, figuring out a new routine, how to go about their daily activities, and trying to keep things as they were in this new situation. But one thing that we all have in common right now is that everyone is experiencing a loss and people are grieving for these losses. And so these losses, although they do include death, they are other losses as well. You know, everyone has lost a sense of safety. We've lost freedoms. We can't just go shopping anymore. We've lost jobs. And because of that, we've also lost a sense of identity. So I've been helping a lot of people with grieving over all kinds of losses right now, loss to connecting with people. And I am seeing people going through our typical 5 stages of grief, and it started off when all the COVID news came about. A lot of people were in denial, denial what was happening, denial about what the consequences were going to be. And then it does turn into anger for people. People are angry they can't work and they can't see their family, they can't see their friends. And we go through this bargaining stage. If we do our 2 weeks of quarantine, then we'll be back to our norm. And we're not seeing that yet. People are getting very depressed right now, our 4th stage, and learning ways to help themselves. People who haven't been depressed before and people who are depressed are finding themselves having that depression getting worse. And there is a point where we have to get to this acceptance stage to be able to help ourselves and give us a feeling of being in control, because obviously we don't have control of what's going on right now, but we do have control over our reactions to the situation and our actions and how we want to respond. And so people are looking for ways to get that control.
So I think you're right. There are all sorts of losses that we are experiencing right now. And as you mentioned, we do have control over how we act. So to be specific, when we're looking at all of these COVID-19 deaths that we might be encountering, as we know more and more family members and friends who might be succumbing to it, and we can't be together with family or friends to mourn, what can we do then?
Well, luckily we're in a time where we have technology on our side. And so one of the biggest things for people right now is to remain connected in any way they can. And for some people, it's going to be a telephone call. For others, it's having the ability to do a face-to-face and be able to engage in conversation that way. So staying connected, because especially, with Jewish traditions, we are so used to being with our family and being with friends and having support from them when we are going through a mourning period. And because that is extremely limited, if it's even possible, people can certainly help support others by reaching out. And, even if you are able to write a note, if you don't have a sympathy card on hand, write a note and send that in the mail to the person. Anything that we can do to be supportive right now is going to be beneficial in helping us to feel connected and supported by our community. For some people too, it's going to be getting that spiritual connection, tuning into temples' virtual services, reaching out when they need extra help. And, many therapists are doing telehealth right now. So it makes it easy to be able to get that extra help if needed.
So you mentioned that staying connected is really important. And you also mentioned that funerals today and for the foreseeable future are going to look very different than we are accustomed to. You mentioned that so many of our Jewish traditions involve people, being around people and with people as we go through our mourning time. But even our funerals are different, where fewer than 10 people can gather at the graveside. We can't touch our loved ones. We can't touch the casket. What advice could you offer perhaps for times like that? How can we deal with the feeling of maybe a lack of closure?
Yeah, certainly. It is a lack of closure. And, unfortunately, as we all know, hospitals are limiting visitors. And sometimes when we know someone is going to be passing away, we spend our time with them and have that closure, say our goodbyes. And so right now, it's not possible to be in person. So, if someone is in that situation, to be able to say goodbye and get closure, whether again, it's on the phone or through our technology, that is certainly a way to stay connected. But yeah, the funerals are going to be looking a lot different. They already have changed. We're seeing in some of the other states right now, since we can't congregate, people are lining up in their cars to watch their loved one being buried. And we also are seeing people using Zoom and other ways to be able to show the funeral online. Even with Shiva, people are able to use these technologies to help people feel included in the Shiva in the morning. But we also want to keep a perspective here. It's not that we necessarily are canceling our traditions or canceling how we go about things. But if we look at it more as postponing it, we can still get that closure at some point. So when it is safe, I do encourage people, go to the gravesite, put a rock on the tombstone, and find out, hey, when is the unveiling going to be? Because, in a year from now, hopefully we'll be able to participate in that. So our closure is going to be postponed for many reasons right now. But again, it's about staying connected in any way we can. So if that includes watching something on the computer to be able to feel like you're a part of it, then again, please do so. And we're also seeing a lot of people having what's called anticipatory grief right now. And in a sense, they've started their own mourning process, feeling grief, feelings of anger, sadness, all kinds of emotions right now about what the future will hold, because we have so much uncertainty right now and no one knows. And so people develop this anticipatory grief as almost a preparation, so that if and possibly when we especially have these personal connections with us, resulting in loss, that this anticipatory grief helps to prepare for that a little bit. And it's important for people to acknowledge these feelings. It's okay. Acknowledge them. Don't try to push them away. Acknowledge them. Have an outlet for them in some way. When helping ourselves with grief, it is important to be able to get these feelings out. And so talking about it is certainly one way. So someone who lost someone can talk to a friend or a family member about their story, having a story and getting that out. And that goes hand in hand too with trauma. And this pandemic certainly is providing trauma for people. It's very traumatic to go through, and it's very complicated because we're not looking at just a certain loss. there's loss upon loss upon loss, different losses. And so it is making the grieving process more complicated for people. But the biggest thing right now is that self-care and taking care of yourself and helping with that, whether you're having anticipatory grief or you are grieving a loss. Take care of yourself, exercise. Pets are very therapeutic. You know, if you have a pet, you know, snuggle with your pet. That helps us to be able to cope with the grief and the feelings that we have.
Yeah, it's interesting. The anticipatory grief, I imagine, can be just as paralyzing as actual grief when mourning a loss.
Sure. And you know, we're seeing that happening. There are people certainly right now who are having personal connections to people dying, and whether it's from COVID or not, we still have the same things that we have to deal with as far as the funeral and our religious observances. And that also is a really hard piece for people right now, that we can't necessarily fulfill our religious observances with death. And actually, we have a term called cognitive emotive dissonance. And basically, it says that just because something doesn't feel right, it doesn't mean it's wrong. And we're seeing a lot of that now because we're having to make all these adjustments and adapt to this new way of life. So just because we are watching a funeral virtually, it doesn't perhaps feel right, but it doesn't make it wrong. It's what we have control over now. It's what we can do to be a part of supporting our family and friends.
So, Jamie, do you think it's about adjusting our expectations for the moment based on what we can control and what we do have control over?
Yes, because things are not the same right now, and they're not going to be. And of course, we don't have that crystal ball to tell us when this is going to go back to some kind of norm. It's not going to be the same norm we had. So if people have these expectations of, you know, being able to attend a funeral or go to their family and friends' houses for Shiva, it's not safe. It's not going to be a possibility right now. But we have to think about what we do have control over and using what we have control over to help in the mourning process and with grief. You know, there's a lot of grief groups that are very supportive because people are in the company of others who have gone through a similar kind of loss. And we're trying to get some telehealth options out there for groups to do it, but it's not the same. You're not in that physical proximity. And so part of this, again, it goes back to acceptance and control. So those are the big things to think about when we are grieving right now. Yeah,
such important information. Is there anything else that you want to share with us?
So one thing just for others to be supportive to some things I may not have talked about earlier, it's really important that people continue to be supportive. It's a little harder when you're not bumping into someone, you know, maybe at a temple event and, oh, you know, how's it going? How are you doing? Because we don't have these opportunities right now. And so a lot of times after the initial event, after some period of mourning, people tend to not check in on their family and friends as much. And so definitely try to keep that support going. It might be listening to your loved one, just to be there for them, to lend an ear. And that also ties into what we have. It's a sixth stage of the grieving process, and it's about finding meaning. And right now in our times, finding meaning is a lot harder because our opportunities are so limited. And so supporting someone from afar, you know, and maybe that person's meaning right now is to be a supportive friend. Maybe it's to be able to listen Maybe it's to help people to be able to express their feelings in some sort of way. So it's also important when we are grieving. At the end of our grieving process, we have to find what our meaning is with all of this.
Thank you, Jamie, for giving us such important insights and reminding us of what we can do and how we can take care of ourselves and continue to support those around us that we care about. So again, I was joined by Jamie Dell, a licensed professional counselor, to share some insights with us. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.